Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Jana Panarites, and you're listening to the AgeWYZ podcast, where we give you strategies for aging well and wisely. Not every 24-year-old can say she spent her summers off during college working for a home care services company, but our guest today can. Her name is Mickele Hogan, and she's about to debut her first full-length play, which was inspired by her summers spent working as a caregiver at Home Instead Senior Care. Mickele's play, called Mourning the Living, explores the toll dementia takes, not just on the person with dementia, but on the people around them, especially the caregiver. The play was chosen by a panel of veteran playwrights to be included in the upcoming Thespis Theater Festival in New York City. Mickele is a graduate of New York University's Tisch School of the Arts, and she's a founding member of the Joust Theater Company in New York. Writer, actor, director, and singer, yes, she sings too, Mickele Hogan, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Like most people who live in New York, you're from somewhere else. So tell us about where you grew up and how you came to work at Home Instead.
I grew up in Omaha, Nebraska, and I came to work at Home Instead. My parents started the company, and I'd always wanted to be a caregiver. I think it's in our blood to care for others. I grew up visiting nursing homes with my parents and had just a very heightened awareness of the aging population and diseases such as Alzheimer's and dementia and the impact that it has on our world, especially with that being projected in the future with the baby boomer generation coming up and starting to get older and just how much need there is for care. So I interned for the franchise office at Home Instead in Omaha as an administrative assistant, working the front desk, and did their caregiving training and would fill in caregiver shift when they needed me to. So one of the clients that I caregived for, she was a dementia patient, and it was the first time I cared for someone with dementia. And even though for a dementia patient, she was pretty easy, but I found it very difficult to get her just through her daily routine of like putting in her eye drops, taking her medication, getting to do her physical exercises, getting her into the shower. The only answer she would give me is like, I'll do it later.
I've heard that.
And I was like, well, I can't do it later because I have to make sure you get through this routine before your son gets back from work. So, but once I got her to put in her eye drops, it was like a small task, but it felt like a huge accomplishment because then we were able to get through the rest of the routine. And I was just kind of thinking, wow, this is probably an easy day for her son. Yeah. And it was still difficult, and he's there for the good and the bad. And then I was reading more stories, and one that jumped out at me was this woman whose husband was in the late stages of early onset Alzheimer's, and he was in a home, and she decided to start a new relationship with someone else. And I found this dynamic very interesting. She talked about how half of her family was supportive of her decision, saying, you know, you need someone to take care of your needs too, and have that support and love from someone else. And her other half of the family was basically, how dare you? How could you do this to him? And that's where I drew the plot, basically, of my play, just based around that decision to include someone else in her life. A lot of videos that I watched about a spouse talking about taking care of their loved one with Alzheimer's, it sounds like they had, you know, a great marriage before it all settled in. And I started thinking, you know, what if it wasn't a great marriage and you would have to take care of someone who maybe if they hadn't been diagnosed, it wouldn't have worked out. And there's so many emotions that come with caregiving with someone with dementia or Alzheimer's that people are embarrassed to express, like guilt or resentment and anger and loneliness and feeling like I got gypped out of a full life that I would have had. And there are moments of joy within caring for someone with Alzheimer's. There are, you know, the good and the bad, and I kind of wanted to bring to light all of the emotions that come along with caring for someone. I think there's also moments of you kind of detach yourself from them and you start to let go, and then there's a moment that they remember something and it sparks all these emotions like maybe they're getting better, maybe they're here. they're back, and then that moment disappears.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just like a whirlwind of emotions. So that's what I wanted to portray in the play.
Mm-hmm. So you're giving a voice to the caregivers, and I like that. Sounds like you're not necessarily taking sides. You're just creating more of a balance. Okay. When you were doing readings of this, did people offer up situations in their own families? And I wondered if you have any friends who are dealing with this in their family, and if you've had discussions with folks about this.
One of the actors has a family member with Alzheimer's,
mm-hmm.
and he would give accounts of his own experience with it. And I think one topic when you're dealing with someone with Alzheimer's, like a loved one, and something silly happens or funny, or they say something that's silly, like it's okay to laugh and like have an actual laugh about it, because if you don't laugh about the things that are funny, it's just everything's sad. And I definitely included some of those moments in the play. Another point was, so in my play, there's Kay, the wife of David, who has the Alzheimer's. Kay is a high school teacher,
mm-hmm.
and then her neighbor, her name's Marie, takes care of David while she's at work.
Mm-hmm.
And David's relationship with Marie brings out a little bit more life in him, just because she's caring for him for most of the day, and it's her job to keep him stimulated. And someone said, when someone has a disease, it's easier to be good friends with someone when they kind of know you after you've gotten the disease, rather than a friend that you knew before.
Oh, that's a really interesting point.
Because they think of you as, they remember you as who you once were, rather than if someone who you interact with after you've forgotten the disease, they know you who you are right now, and they don't expect you to fill the shoes of who you once were.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of allows for a easier relationship between you two.
Right. It takes a pretty big person to kind of be steady and not get all caught up in who that person was before, if you're the partner,
mm-hmm.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
So the situation is that David has Alzheimer's, and Marie, his neighbor, mm-hmm. cares for him during the day, in the same way that when you were working at home instead, you would go and fill in for the spouse or caregiver of the person who actually lives in the home. Home instead does in-home mm-hmm. work, right? So Marie was filling mm-hmm. that role that you had, really, in a way.
Yes.
I mean, it's also a little bit maybe easier to do it when you're not related to the person, so you don't have as much at stake, I think, like Marie.
Mm-hmm.
And so in your play, did you say the dynamic between David and Kay is that they were not in a good marriage to begin with, or what Kay saw?
They were. Okay. The situation between David and Kay is they had a good marriage at the start, and then work became a priority for him over family.
Uh-huh.
And also, once he got the disease, he would tend to bury himself in his work to avoid his own embarrassment and frustration, and he wouldn't let her in. So it just put a lot of strain on the relationship. I know a lot of people say, if the person with Alzheimer's accepts it and works towards having as much joy in their life and working towards keeping their memory sharp, and they want to be actively working against it, it's much easier for the person caring for them. But David was a person who got frustrated and mm-hmm. didn't want to talk about it mm-hmm. and wanted to go on with his life like he normally would as long as he could. So it just put a lot of strain on the relationship as she was trying to care for him.
Sounds like a really great play. Why did you write this play, and what do you hope to achieve with it?
I hope to achieve creating that awareness around Alzheimer's and the ones caring for those with Alzheimer's. Probably 1 in maybe 4 people have some sort of experience or know someone with Alzheimer's, and that number is just going to keep increasing until almost everyone knows of someone or has a direct relationship with it. And this play kind of gives an opportunity to kind of stare it in the face and just ask questions about not only what it'd be like to have Alzheimer's and live with it, but also what would I do in this situation as a caregiver. Like, even though Kay decides to take on a new relationship, it's unclear whether or not she's going to continue in it. But at the end, I don't want the audience to blame her one way or the other, whatever decision she would end up deciding to do. Just to really understand how complex the emotions are.
I think that's really important because I read a lot from caregivers about how frustrating it is for them to feel judged by people with what they're doing and the choices they're making. You know, it's really, really hard.
Yeah.
And if you haven't walked that walk, you just don't know how hard it is. And it strikes such a huge chord, and it's such a hot issue right now.
Yeah.
You know, I wish you all the best with this. And good for you for taking it on. Is there anything else that I left out that you'd like to add before we take off?
Oh, and I think you're so right about caregivers and how they get frustrated because it can very much be a burden. And I think loneliness is a huge thing that caregivers experience. It's easy to get depressed if you're not actively seeking community. And for those who know of caregivers who are caring for someone, it would be great just to check in with them, offer to provide care for a few hours, send them, latest research on Alzheimer's or any kind of new apps that are involved with caring for someone. There's a lot that we can do to help support caregivers in our world.
Mickele Hogan, she's the writer and producer of Mourning the Living, a play whose time has come. It's being presented at the Hudson Guild Theater in New York City as part of the Thespis Theater Festival, August 11, August 13, and August 14. We'll have all kinds of links on our website to the show. Mickele, thanks so much for being on the podcast, and best of luck with Mourning the Living. That's it for today. Thanks for joining us. The AgeWYZ podcast is produced and edited by me, Jana Panarites, and you can listen to the show and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. The AgeWYZ podcast is also distributed on the nationally syndicated Speak Up Talk Radio Network, the 24/7 streaming and on-demand network that's always on for you. And don't forget to check out our website for more amazing caregiving stories from the field. Go to AgeWYZ.com, that's AGEWYZ, and find out how you can be a guest on the show. Remember, every caregiver has a story. I want to hear yours.